We are going to be talking about how to multiply multiples of 10, 100, and 1000. So we've been working on factors and multiples for the last 2 weeks or so. And we know that multiples are the products, right? Multiples are the products of two factors. So when we're talking about multiples of 10, 100, and 1000, first, we need to know what are the multiples of 10, 100, and 1000. So I want you to kind of take a second and think about, how do you find multiples? How do you find multiples of a number? We can find multiples two different ways. We can skip count by that number, or we can use our basic multiplication facts, right? So if I wanted to find the multiples of 10, I could either skip count by 10, or I could write down my basic facts for 10. So 10 times 1 is 10. 10 times 2 is 20. 10 times 3 is 30. 10 times 4 is 40, and so on, right? Now, it's really easy to skip count by 10. That's something we've been doing since we were little, right? So it's very easy to skip count by 10s. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. I can easily skip count by 10s, right? Same thing with 100 and 1000. They're both very easy to skip count by. So today when we're talking about multiplying the multiples of 10, 100, and 1000, we're going to use skip counting to help us do that, okay? So let's take a look here. On the left-hand side, I have my multiplication table. This is going to come in handy today, as we're going to use it to make sure that we have our basic multiplication facts correct. We don't want to make any small math mistakes that are going to mess up our problem, okay? So let's take a look at the solve and share. The solve and share says to find the products for 3 times 4, 3 times 40, 3 times 400, and 3 times 4,000. Wow, those are some big numbers, right? Those are some big numbers. So let's take it step by step, and let's take it very slow so that we can start to recognize some patterns here that are really going to help us solve these big problems, okay? So the first thing I encourage you to do is go ahead and write down in your notebook all of these multiplication problems, and we're going to start with 3 times 4. So I'll model for you how it should look in your notebook. So 3 times 4 we'll do first. I'm just going to put a blank there because I'll fill that in. Then we'll do 3 times 40, 3 times 400, and last but not least, we have to do 3 times 4,000. And you might be thinking, whoa, how am I going to multiply these big numbers? It's really easy though, so just pay attention to the patterns, all right? We're going to use our basic facts to help us do this today. So I want you to take a look at the very, very first multiplication problem that we have. It's just 3 times 4. This one right here, I'm going to highlight this for you because this is very important. So this 3 times 4, I'm actually just going to put a little star next to it. So 3 times 4 is what we call our basic fact, right? It's just our basic multiplication fact, 3 times 4. I know what 3 times 4 is, right? If you don't know what 3 times 4 is, I encourage you to take a look at your multiplication chart. Your multiplication table will help you find 3 times 4. So you can count by 3s, you can count by 4s, or you can look at your multiplication chart and see 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times 4 is 12. So I'm going to write 12 on my line. 3 times 4 is 12. Now we're going to use that basic fact, 3 times 4 is 12, to help us do the rest of these problems. So I want you to imagine that you have a magnifying glass in your hand. So a magnifying glass helps you to zoom into something, right? Helps you to see something that's real tiny and kind of will be able to see all of the little patterns and details on this small thing. So we're going to use this magic magnifying glass that we're pretending that we have to kind of go ahead and look into these problems to see if there's any little details that we notice about these problems. Because at first glance, I'm thinking, whoa, I don't know how to do this, but let's take a look here. If we're using the basic fact 3 times 4 is 12 to solve this problem, well, do you see your basic fact inside of 3 times 40? If I ignore this 0 here, if I just, pretend like the 0 isn't there, I see that I have 3 times 4. You can see your basic fact 3 times 4. Totally ignore the 0 for right now. Cover it up or just pretend it's not there, okay? We said that 3 times 4 is 12. So go ahead and write 12 because you know that 3 times 4 is 12. Now, how many zeros do you have in your problem that you didn't use? You should be thinking, I have 1 0. This 0 right here is the only 0 that I have in my problem that I didn't use. So go ahead and bring that 0 into your product, into your answer, and we have our product of 120. So 3 times 40 is hard for me to do, but not if you use your basic facts. 3 times 4 is 12, and however many zeros you have in the problem, that's however many zeros you'll write in your answer. So I have 1 0, so I bring that 0 over into my answer, so my product is 120. Okay, let's try another example with this same basic fact. So 3 times 400, that seems super scary and big, right? But take that magic magnifying glass and zoom in. What basic fact do you see inside of 3 times 400? Ignore the zeros, pretend the zeros aren't there, and you see 3 times 4 again. I know that 3 times 4 is 12, so I'm going to write 12. Now, how many zeros do you have in this problem that you didn't use? Well, you have 1, 2 zeros. So bring those 2 zeros over into your product, and you get 1,200. Starting to see a pattern, starting to catch on. So all we're doing is we're using our basic multiplication facts, those facts that you have on your flashcards, those facts that you write down 3 times, those facts that you practice on extra math. We're using those to help us multiply really big numbers. All right, now let's try 3 times 4,000. Whoa, again, don't be intimidated. Ignore the zeros. You still see 3 times 4 here. And I know that 3 times 4 is 12. How many zeros do you have in this problem that you didn't use? I have 1, 2, 3 zeros. So bring those 3 zeros over here into your product, and you have 12,000. So 3 times 4,000 is 12,000. So we can start to catch on and start to see here, wow, all I really need to know is my basic fact 3 times 4, and I can solve all of these problems mentally. Okay, let's do another example. All right. For number 6, I have 3 times 70, 3 times 700, and 3 times 7,000. Again, we need to figure out what is our basic fact that we see inside of this problem. Take that magic magnifying glass, ignore all the zeros in your problem, and what basic fact do you see? I see 3 times 7. So let's take, actually, I'm going to just make this a little bit bigger. I see 3 times 7. So I'm going to go ahead and underline my basic fact, which is 3 times 7. And what is 3 times 7? 3 times 7 is 21. So I'm going to write 21 on the line. And now I'm going to go back into my problem. How many zeros do I have in my problem that I need to have carried over into my product? Just 1 0, right? See this 1 0 and 70? So I'm going to bring that 1 0 over. So my product for 3 times 70 is 210. 210. All right, let's do the same thing. Again, we're looking at 3 times 700. I see the basic fact 3 times 7. I'm ignoring the zeros. I'll worry about them in a second. But right now, my goal with my magic magnifying glass is just to pick out that basic fact. My basic fact is 3 times 7. I know that 3 times 7 is 21. So I'm going to write 21. How many zeros do I have in the problem that I didn't use? 2 zeros. Bring those 2 zeros over, and your product is 2,100. Right? Last but not least, I have 3 times 7,000. Again, ignore all those zeros. It doesn't matter how many zeros you have in the number, ignore them in the beginning. Just look for your basic fact. My basic multiplication fact, again, is 3 times 7. I know that 3 times 7, once again, is 21. Now go back and count how many zeros do you have in your whole problem. 1, 2, 3. Bring these 3 zeros over into your answer. 1, 2, 3. And my product is 21,000. So all we're doing, guys, is we're taking our basic fact, whatever that basic fact is, solving it, and then adding zeros as we need to. Okay, so let's take a look at number 7. Number 7, can anybody identify what the basic fact is in number 7? All 3 of those multiplication problems have the basic fact, ignore the zeros, of 6 times 4. All of these have 6 times 4, right? So I can go through 6 times 40. Well, I see that 6 times 4 is 24. And how many zeros are in your problem? Just 1. So 6 times 40 is 240. For 6 times 400, again, I see that I have 6 times 4 is 24. How many zeros are in your problem? There's 2, so bring your 2 zeros over. 2,400. And last but not least, 6 times 4,000, again, same thing. You can see your basic multiplication fact. 6 times 4 is 24. How many zeros do you have in the problem? You have 3. Bring those 3 zeros over. 24,000. Okay. So I encourage you to keep practicing these problems. Okay, I encourage you to keep practicing these problems. Remember, as you're going through these, if they are multiples of 10, 100, or 1,000, like for instance, 8 times 60. 60 is a multiple of 10. It ends in a 0. So I can easily just use my basic fact, 8 times 6, to be able to solve what 8 times 60 is, right? If I know that 8 times 6 is 48, just carry over that 0, 480, and continue to do that for 8 times 600 and 8 times 6,000. Okay, and then once you're finished, go ahead and do 9 through 11 independently for some independent practice. Okay, we will continue to practice this. This is just the start of us multiplying, taking our basic facts, understanding that all we really need to do is find those basic facts and add our zeros to our product, and we can do this mentally.